Motifs are recurring structures, contrast, or literary devices that can help to develop and inform the text major themes. The first motive, observation and eavesdropping. Marlowe gains a great deal of information by watching the world around him and by overhearing others' conversations, as when he listens from the deck of the wrecked steamer to the manager of the central station and his uncle discussing Kurtz and the Russian trader. This phenomenon speaks to the impossibility of direct communication between individuals. Information must come as the result of chance observation and astute interpretation. Words themselves fail to capture meaning adequately, and thus they must be taken in the context of their utterance. Another good example of this motive, this Marlowe's conversation with the brickmaker, during which Marlowe is able to figure out a good deal more than simply what the man has to say. Interiors and exteriors, the other motive of this novel. Comparisons between interiors and exteriors pervade Heart of Darkness. As the narrator states at the beginning of the text, Marlowe is more interested in surfaces, in the surrounding aura of a thing rather than in any hidden nugget of meaning deep within the thing itself. This inverts the usual hierarchy of meaning. Normally, one seeks the deep message or hidden truth. The priority placed on observation demonstrates that penetrating to the interior of an idea or a person is impossible in this world. Marlowe is confronted with a series of exteriors and surfaces. The riverbanks, the forest walls around the station, Kurtz's broad forehead that he must interpret. These exteriors are all the material he is given, and they provide him with perhaps a more profound source of knowledge than any falsely constructed interior kernel. Darkness. Darkness is important enough conceptually to be part of the book's title. However, it is difficult to discern exactly what it might mean, given that absolutely everything in the book is cloaked in darkness. Africa, England, and Brussels are all described as gloomy and somehow dark, even if the sun is shining brightly. Darkness thus seems to be operate metaphorically and existentially rather than specifically. Darkness is the inability to see. This may sound simple, but as a description of the human condition, it has profound implications. Failing to see another human being means failing to understand that individual and failing to establish any sort of sympathetic communion with him or her. The company. The company, vast European trading company which sent Marlowe to Africa. Other motives, maps. As a child, Marlowe was interested in the blank, unexplored spots on maps, which inspired his interest in Africa. He saw such maps with the blank spots filled in the company offices. White City, the city most likely Brussels, Belgium, struck Marlowe as being a sepulchral like coffin, cold and dead. He felt uneasy upon first arriving. When he returned, he barely saw the people of the city as human. It is always a lonely, disturbing place for him. Again, French ship is another motive. This ship was firing for no apparent reason into a stretch of jungle. Its crew claimed that there were enemies they were firing at. The men on the ship, stricken with disease, were dying at a startling rate. Company station, the first stop for the ship taking Marlowe to Africa. Here the journey to the interior would begin. Here dozens of enslaved natives were beginning to build a railroad. Ivory, the commercial good around which the entire company revolved. The entire massive operation was carried out for only a small amount of ivory. Kurtz was bafflingly good at sending back huge quantities of ivory. Central Station, the midpoint of Marlowe's trip. Here is the ship, the pilgrims, and the manager awaited his arrival. The atmosphere here was one of complicated company politics. Interior Station, The innermost point of the company's penetration into Africa from here, Kurds had established a dominion of power over the local tribes. Ship. The steamer that Marlowe was supposed to pilot had sunk in the river before he even arrived, and he had to spend months repairing it. It took Marlowe and the pilgrims upriver to get Kurds. It returned in rapidly declining repair. The hut. A curious outpost of civilization, halfway up the river, this hut was at one time occupied by a young Russian who had left there a book and firewood for the next person to come along. Article. A report on suppression of savage customs which Kurds undertook to write with a mind towards progress and civilization. After writing the 17-page pamphlet, Kurds angrily wrote, "Exterminate all the brutes," at the end. Marlowe eventually gave this pamphlet to a friend of Kurds's with the violent words removed. Heads on stakes. The evidence that Kurds, instead of being the noble missionary he intended, had become brutal. The heads were evidence of unsound methods, violence by which he was able to control the natives and reap rich rewards of ivory.